So let me ask you a provocative question. Is your HR technology skill set worth $300,000 a year? Now, that might sound like an outrageous number, but stay with me because I promise it's not as far-fetched as it sounds. Welcome to the HRIS Careers Podcast with your host, Troy Wallace, a podcast for human resources information systems professionals to help you elevate your HRIS career. We always say no one gets into HRIS on purpose, but it sure is interesting to find out how they did. We interview your HRIS peers to find out how they got tricked into the industry and what lessons and tools they use to progress their careers along the way. We discuss industry trends, AI, and even talk candidly about all the most popular HRIS platforms. Just think of it as the closest bar just outside the entrance of your favorite HR technology conference. Now you get it. Welcome in. So I was recently reading through a job posting for an Oracle HCM consulting role at Deloitte. I keep track of all things for HRIS careers and my own career. You know, what are people paying? What's hot out there in our industry? They shared, I'll call it some impressive numbers about their HR strategy and technology practice. So they said they had 2,000 consulting practitioners with a revenue run rate of about $600 million. So if you remember back to our episode with CJ Gustafson, the CFO Whisperer, we talked about some key metrics, and profit per employee or revenue per employee is always important.
And like I said, you get leverage out of your model. So revenue per employee is my favorite metric because it cuts through all the noise. At the end of the day, you can't hide from it, and it's extremely simple math. It's just your total average recurring revenue, annual recurring revenue at the end of the period divided by the number of employees you have on board. And typically, if you're a company that's going to go public and be publicly traded, you want to be over $400,000, just rule of thumb, per employee.
So if you do the math on that, you come up with about $300,000 in revenue per consultant. Now, obviously, that doesn't mean everyone is taking home $300K in salary, but what it does mean is that on average, each consultant's worth about $300,000 to the firm. And here is the interesting part. Now, if that's the value you're generating for a firm, shouldn't that number at least be a benchmark or be in the neighborhood or a target of what you're aiming to earn? Obviously, it depends on, what's your skill set. Are you an Oracle HCM person? Are you a Workday person, SAP? Some of those are at a premium at this point in time. And we know not all Deloitte consultants are probably making that kind of money. Some are senior folks making a lot more. Your offshore resources are probably making a lot less. And there's a whole spread in between. But if you're a U.S.-based consultant, and especially if you're someone who knows how to manage offshore teams effectively, you're in a pretty strong position to get closer to that 300K line. Now, I would say as I look at different listings, it's not far-fetched because if you're looking at maybe not necessarily a manager role, but an HRIS director role in a Fortune, let's say 2,000, 3,000 companies, those base salaries are getting up towards low $200,000 I'm seeing. So, to pay a consultant in what I'll call a top 4 firm like Deloitte or the PwCs or KPMGs of the world, it's really not that far-fetched. If you're the person providing leverage with offshore resources and you can manage them, or you're able to bridge the onshore client relationships with offshore delivery, that's a pretty valuable skill set in the world right now. If you're ensuring the quality, timeliness, and outcomes, that can be a multiplier effect, and you're providing leverage. So let's kind of look at the big picture. If we zoom out for a second, what does this mean for HR technology professionals, whether you're in consulting, corporate HR, or somewhere in between? So number one, it means that you should be thinking not just about what you do, but what value you create. Number two, it means if you want to move toward that 300K threshold, you certainly need to develop skills that go beyond technical, stakeholder management, team leadership, offshore coordination, and the ability to connect technology back to business value and business outcomes. And three, it means being a strategic about the where you play. Maybe it's a big 4 firm like Deloitte, KPMG, Accenture. Maybe you find a role with a Fortune 1000 company. Again, those salaries just at base are getting into the 200K range. If they have some stock options or profit shares or any annual bonuses, you're getting in that range of 300K. Obviously, if you're at the entry level, this is something to shoot for and develop your career so you're in position for that in a couple of years. But even if you're not in consulting, same principle applies. Companies are willing to pay for people who can deliver outsized value. If you want to go over to YouTube, I am going to show this job posting, but I would say if you ever go over to and look on LinkedIn or directly to the Deloitte website, anything that's in their Oracle HCM or even in their HR strategy practice, I'm sure they have Workday and SAP practices as well. You can see this blurb where they're talking about the revenue and how many consultants they have running around the world to make this revenue. So here's the takeaway. The $300,000 number isn't just a fantasy figure. I would consider it a watermark. It's a signal of the value HR technology professionals can command in today's market. So ask yourself, what am I doing today that demonstrates 300K worth of value? What skills do I need to build to get there? And am I positioning myself in the right places and with the right firms to make that a reality? Again, this is all saying if the almighty dollar is the most important thing to you, there's lots of other things like autonomy, flexibility on work schedule. There's lots of levers to compensation in a good workplace. The question really is are you building the career, the skills, and the positioning that make you worth it? That's something to ponder. Something to think about as you plan for your next career move in the HR technology space. Hey, if you want to help the podcast or HRIS Careers, want to ask if you go over to HRISCareers.com /email, throw your email address in there. That's kind of the lifeblood of the community at this point. Google doesn't own that. Facebook doesn't own that. So that is one place where we can get the message out to you. So I would certainly appreciate it.
Here we go.